Hi guys, it's Lily,
And this is Clover.
and welcome back to
All the tea we cannot sip.
Welcome back. We took a break last week, and I am ready to get into this.
Yes, me too. We had a miscommunication planning this one where I planned one thing and you planned another, and we
Yes,
didn't realize until we sat down to record it.
I know, and you were so patient with me because I had a hectic week last week with work, and I went on vacation, and we didn't really have time to re-investigate what we were going to talk about and record last week. So we took a week off and now we're back on the same page and it feels right.
Yes. Well, and that's life too,
It
you
is.
know.
Especially me not reading key elements of of anything and I miss important information. So I usually read things multiple times, but of course I didn't and that's okay. Now we have two ideas and I'm excited.
My husband does that too, and I get all Law and Order on him, and I'm like, refer to the text, Exhibit 1, scroll up.
My husband does that to me too. He's like, that's not what I said. I'm like, yes, it is. He's like, go back.
Oh, that's funny. How was your vacation?
It was hectic, but so much fun. We went to Orlando. We had a reunion for an organization that we are in, but we also went to Universal, and it was so much fun, except this organization bought us plane tickets. I'm very thankful. It saved us a lot of money. But it was Southwest. Have you flown Southwest recently?
No.
Southwest does not assign you a seat. They give you
Hmm.
a zone to board in, and then you pick your seat. So
Oh.
me and my husband did not get to sit together until we were coming back, and I had a meltdown in the Denver airport, and I was like, I'm leaving. I was like, I'm
Oh
not sitting
no.
in the middle of strangers again. It was
Oh,
ridiculous because by the time we had gotten on, and I didn't even know getting on the first one that we had to pick our own seats because I was like, somebody's in my seat, and the flight attendant was like, no, you pick wherever. I was like, okay, whatever. Yeah, it was just too much because by the time we got on, there were only middle seats left. So I didn't get to sit anywhere near my husband. I was frustrated. I was tired. I was swelling. And so when we got to Denver, we upgraded so we could board for in the first zone. And we
yeah.
were able to sit together in the very front seat with extra leg room. I was happy.
That is frustrating. I've been on flights before where I didn't get to pick my seats and where I was assigned to separate to my husband, but we've always been able to just ask if they could put us together, and they did.
Yeah.
But I remember on our honeymoon, we didn't get put together, and I was too afraid to ask. And so I was just sitting there bawling in the seats because this was when we were returning home, and this was a our honeymoon was also like a family vacation where I met my in-laws for the first time, and my mother-in-law was having health problems, and thought I might never see her again, so I was bawling with my sunglasses on while my husband saw if someone would switch. And the lady next to me was just looking at me like terrified, and so when the flight attendant came over and said, would you mind switching seats so her husband can sit with her? She like said, "Yep," got up right away. No problem. She
Oh,
must have thought we were coming back from a funeral or something.
I know. And when I fly alone, which I've done many times, it's not a big deal to sit in the middle of
Right.
strangers. But knowing my husband is on the flight and oh my gosh, on our flight from Chicago to Orlando, he sat next to this couple. They met in the airport like 20 minutes before the flight left. They were making out next to him. Like,
That is so trashy.
and she was like buying beers. Like, the flight attendant ended up cutting her off because she was trying to get my husband to give her his keys so that they could shotgun beers on the plane. And he
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
I'm not trying to do that. Like, I'm good. I have a beer. Like, she was trying to get people she didn't know around her to buy her, like, to get beers for her because the flight attendant would not buy her. So, if you were flying from Orlando, or if you were flying from Chicago to Orlando and that was you, that was very, very tacky.
So tacky. Did either of them have a wedding ring on? Did he look?
He didn't, but he said that when they landed, she got FaceTimed by two different guys. And he just thought it was a little much.
Well, and I am all for sexual freedom, and we don't slut shame here, but also I believe in being safe about it. And hooking up with someone when you're really drunk and someone you've only known for 20 minutes probably isn't the best idea.
And I am also very open with sexuality, but I also believe there's a time and a place, and an
Mm-hmm.
airplane, especially in economy,
Right?
like,
Next to a stranger.
yes, making
I
out,
agree.
yeah, like it. And he was like, "You didn't hear her?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "Oh, she was like calling for you, like saying I love you." And I was like, "I was watching RuPaul's Drag Race. Like, I don't have time for any of
She was
it."
calling for you?
Yeah, because I had texted my husband and he was like, or she asked him who that was. And I said, he told her it was me and what my name was. And she was like calling my name out and basically like, Lily, I love you. You're the greatest.
Oh
And,
my God.
and when
And
we
your
got,
husband is not like he's stoic. He
he's,
knows how to have a good time and stuff, but I can just see him being extra annoyed.
yeah, he's not an
Like,
approachable person.
and has he ever shotgunned a beer in his life? I can't even imagine that.
Probably when we were in our, no, I don't think I've ever seen him do it. I've done it, but he definitely would never do it on it. He's never, since we've been married, and he turned 21 when we got married, so maybe when he was in high school he beer bonged or shotgunned, but definitely
Mm-hmm.
not since we've been married.
Yeah, I can't picture it.
And I'm just like, oh, it's really sad when a flight attendant has to cut you off
It is. It is.
because
And
I
she's honestly lucky they didn't kick her off
I know. And I was
or
like,
have the air marshal waiting for her when they landed.
that's what my husband said too. He was like, I'm surprised there was no air marshal when we got off because people were coming up to my husband and being like, oh my gosh, you were right next to that. Like at baggage claim, probably like four people came up to us and was like, what's going on? Like, are you okay? What happened? And he was like, they went through every stage. They were talking about meeting each other's families when the plane landed.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That is a red flag if I've ever heard one.
I know. And I'm just like, oh, geez. So yeah, I have decided that I will only fly Delta and United. Those are the ones I like. Not sponsored, but I
I
just
feel like Southwest owes you some free miles or something, but then you'd have to fly with them again.
I know. Which luckily I did have a couple drinks on the plane. I wasn't charged for any of them but one, and I probably had five, like over
That
4 flights.
that's good.
Yeah. So because we had a layover each way. So 4 flights, I
Mm-hmm.
probably had 5 drinks, and they only charged me for one. So
Good.
yeah, but I I also won't fly Frontier just because of the baggage situation. They charge you even for a backpack.
That's ridiculous.
Yes. So when I'm coming to see you, I am flying Delta one way, United the other, and that's what I like because it was just cheaper to fly two different airlines. Or it wasn't cheaper, but the time was better. So,
Right.
um, but those are two airlines that I really do like, and I don't have to worry about paying for a backpack or paying, I think on Frontier, if your bag is like 30 to 50 pounds or, 49 pounds, it's like $180 to check it.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I do like Delta.
I've had good luck with Delta and
Mm-hmm.
also United. American Airlines, I've just been treated very poorly by workers of American Airlines at airports, and I'm just like, nah, not worth my time to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a Delta or United flight from the airport I live by, so
Mm-hmm.
and Harry Potter was magical. I drank butterbeers, I went to Honeydukes, and I got us some cute stuff.
I love that. People say Disney is the happiest place on earth, but I disagree.
Me too. Because we did go to Disney Springs or downtown Disney, and we got some really good cookies from this cookie place that I just brain dumped the name of. But they were really good, better than Crumble. But the wait was like,
Really?
yeah, the wait was like 2 hours. So we had to like check in and then leave and then come back. So we walked around and saw cute stuff, but with a couple from the organization we're a part of that we have known for quite a few years. And it was a good time. We had some wine slushies and I got a $20 margarita that was gross, and so I threw it away.
Oh,
But
what a bummer.
I know, but also it was making me gag. So I tried to drink as much as I could, but I'm like, ugh, ugh.
Margaritas are my favorite drink, but they can definitely be bad.
It was,
Was it a slushy one?
yes.
Yep, can't do it. It's gotta be on the rocks, in my opinion.
And it was mango.
Oh yeah.
It just didn't mix well with tequila and
Mm-hmm.
so, but I had a great time and I had a phone interview today for a new job. So, and I have an in-person interview tomorrow, so I'm really excited and nervous.
Awesome.
So, everything. What about you? How was your weekend?
I don't want to talk about it.
That's okay too.
There were some good moments. There's just drama going on in my family. Like, what else is new?
Ugh,
God forbid I have one cathartic week.
I
Um,
hear
but
you.
there's some good moments. It's finally getting warm here. I played in the water with my son over the weekend, and yeah,
That's
I've been
so,
writing more lately, so that's nice.
yes, and I
You
got your
sent me an
card.
awesome coloring book, and I forgot how relaxing coloring is.
It really is. Just picking colors, and I love coloring.
Me too. There's one night I thought I would, because I'm rewatching Game of Thrones, and I finally am past the part where I stopped watching it when it was on TV. Because I didn't have HBO anymore for a couple of years. And then when it ended, I heard how it ended. So I'm like, what's the point of watching it? So I never watched the last three seasons. But now I'm caught up and it's all new to me. So that's been fun. And I thought I'll just color and watch Game of Thrones. And I ended up not even turning Game of Thrones on. I just colored for an hour. And the sound of like colored pencils on paper, it was so relaxing.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's important to just be able to just be and not
Mm-hmm.
think and not pay attention and just enjoy one thing that you're doing. Because I know
Yes.
I will like play a video game, but I'll have like YouTube on my phone and I'll be listening to
Mm-hmm.
YouTube and playing a video game and talking to my husband. And I feel like as a society, we have so much coming at us all the time. And sometimes it's, that I'm choosing that. Like I'm choosing to turn on YouTube. I'm choosing to do all those things, but also sometimes you don't have a choice and things are just coming at you. So to be able to unplug and just enjoy what you're doing, that's so important.
Very true. Well, this is an episode I've actually been wanting to do for years. Because I started hearing about some of them and wanted to look into them more, and it's book themed conspiracy theories. So conspiracy theories surrounding books, since we're such bookworms. And a lot of them were ones I hadn't heard of. Some of them are like funny and ones I don't really believe, but some of them make me go, huh, that is weird.
I definitely felt that way too. There were some that I was like, I've heard that, or I could see that, but also I'm like, that's a little suspicious almost.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a lot of fun looking these things up. I picked a couple books and just got a bunch from a couple books, and then there's some big ones and some small ones that we don't really have to talk too much about because there's not that much to talk about them, I don't think.
Right.
But um, what is your first one?
So this is one we all know how huge 50 Shades of Grey was. Even before the movies were made, everyone heard about the books because they just blew up and were so popular. And when the books were still being written, but the first one had come out, I remember seeing this, it was probably on Reddit or some other internet source. And my boyfriend at the time brought it up to me and I was like, "Oh my gosh, it kind of just blew my mind." And for the record, these are just conspiracy theories for entertainment purposes only. We are not trying to go against any company, any author, any people, real or fictional. It's just for fun. And E.L. James has been confronted about this conspiracy and has denied it. But the conspiracy theory is that there are many eating disorder themes in 50 Shades of Grey. So some of the main points, the main character's name is Anna, which on the internet has been a slang term for anorexia for years. It's how people who wanted to talk about anorexia or find like inspiration or communities where they could come together about their eating disorders would use it like as tags or in the web URLs because it wouldn't get flagged. So Anna is the main character's name. It's Anastasia, but everyone calls her Anna. And she hardly ever eats. Or we see multiple scenes where Christian or other people are like forcing her to eat, right? Or like encouraging her to eat. So Anna is the main character. Christian's sister is named Mia, which is a slang term for bulimia, where you
Oh,
binge and purge. Um, and in the contract where that Christian wanted her to sign, there's a clause that says she would eat what he wanted when she wanted, pretty much, which is gross in itself. And when so I didn't read all the books because I got bored by the third one, but I remember in the first one how much food was discussed and in detail. Like the most things she writes about are food and sex. I remember many scenes that just talked about like the venison and the blueberry sauce that was on it and roasted potatoes and all this stuff. They eat a lot in the books and they eat really good food. And then in the movies, she hardly eats anything. And MTV actually wrote an article about this and posted it to their website. They watched the first movie and wrote down all the moments she ate or almost ate in the movie. And there's like five. So in the opening scene, she's taking a bite of chicken salad that she's making a sandwich for. And when she's about to eat the sandwich, her roommate comes and literally steals it from her hand. In another scene, I think this was after a night of drinking, she's going to eat a bite of toast, and then a man literally takes it from her hand. I think it was Christian's brother because he had hooked up with her best friend that night. She goes to visit her mom and literally eats one bite of gazpacho, which is basically just salsa with shrimp in it. She has tea and she has lots of alcohol. There are scenes where she's around food, but she never eats it. And you could say that this is all just coincidental, but a study by the University of Michigan studied more than 650 women ages 18 to 24, and they compared them to participants who didn't read the book and those who did. And those who had read 50 Shades of Grey were 75% more likely to have used diet fads in the past, fasting, or have disordered eating. Meaning, when I say fasting, they went more than 24 hours without eating anything. And this could also not mean that it could just be a correlation, right? It doesn't mean 50 Shades of Grey causes eating disorders, but the things we consume do affect us psychologically in ways we might not notice. And when you see a guy saying, I'm going to control what you eat, when you see her literally getting food snatched out of her hand, and how like desirable and wanted she is, and how attractive she's seen, that could affect you mentally.
Yeah,
And the
or
name thing is what's weird to me. Anna
yes.
and Mia in one book.
And I feel like this, it is known that 50 Shades of Grey started as fan fiction. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like people that write fan fiction are on the internet in different places than I am because I didn't know those about the slang terms, but I don't go on Reddit. I don't read fan fiction often. Sometimes if
Mm-hmm.
somebody sends me a link or, it's something that piques my interest, but it's not something I ever seek out for myself to go read. And I feel like
Right.
those type of forums and you would know that by those
Yeah.
websites.
I knew that. Like, this is really going to age me. But back in the day before Blogspot and stuff, there was Zanga. And I remember seeing Zangas that were Anna and Mia. So I learned those terms back in like middle school, high school.
Or maybe I'm just self-centered and I only cared about my Zanga and I didn't read other people.
Could be.
And I do think that that study, did you say by the University of Michigan?
Yes,
I think that 75% is a very large number.
it
Very,
is 70% more likely because
yes.
I mean, eating disorders happen even if you haven't read those books, right? But the fact that they were more likely to was pretty crazy.
And even if it's not a conscious choice, it is still in your subconscious. Like, oh, I
Yes.
can skip this. Like, I don't need this right now. Or, you know, I'll just really really describe what this food looks like and then I won't eat it. Or,
Yeah, that's what
like,
was strange to me. And E.L. James is not like a thin person, but it doesn't mean she's hasn't struggled with disordered eating in the past.
yes.
And the same study also found that women studied who had read the book were more likely to be involved in an abusive relationship. And I don't think we're surprised by that.
No, because with the food thing and the descriptions, I think that that is also tied into some types of eating disorders
Mm-hmm.
because you're not indulging yourself in eating it, but you are fixating on it and what it entails and the aromas and the presentation of how it looks. And I can
I didn't
definitely
even
see
think
that.
of that. You're so right.
Yeah, that's what came to my mind is, you know, I love food. And
Mm-hmm.
I have been every size from a size 0 to a size 24. And when I was at
Mm-hmm.
my smallest, I definitely was struggling with eating disorders. So you do hyperfixate on the things that you're telling yourself that you can't have, whether it's food or drugs, sex, porn. It could be anything, but you're more likely to hyperfixate on something that you're telling yourself that's bad if I have it.
Excellent point. Like, look how popular mukbangs are, mukbangs, however you say it.
Yeah,
And I've seen lots of people in comments saying that, it helps them not eat by watching those videos.
that's sad because
Yeah,
I feel like mukbangs are not as popular as they were probably 5 or 6 years ago,
I think
but
so too.
people are still making them and watching old ones.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that was my first conspiracy theory. Let us know in the comments what you think.
That is a good one, I think. So I looked up, of course, Harry Potter since Harry Potter was on the brain. There were quite a few that I had heard, or and some that I hadn't actually. But the one that always sticks out with me, and it's always whenever you search Harry Potter conspiracies, is that Harry Potter was a figment of, or Hogwarts and the Wizarding World was a figment of Harry Potter's imagination,
Mm,
and that he basically went crazy in the cupboard under the stairs and he made up this whole world and this whole fam friends and family to kind of disassociate from the fact that he was an orphan and he was not loved, which I don't think it's true because I don't want to believe that. Um, it
that
doesn't
is so
end.
sad.
I know, but I know last podcast you brought up that, you used to think that maybe Ozzy Osbourne was your dad. I feel that
Yeah.
kids in, less than desirable situations, they do that. I did that as a kid. I used to think
Hmm.
that my real parents were going to come save me, like come take me away, take me home. And I thought that for a long time, probably till I was like 11. So,
Yeah.
like all of elementary school, I'm like, oh, this isn't my real family. And so
Hmm.
I do think that it's could be very real that, you know, a ch that he was just so sad and so lonely and so neglected that he made up this whole world to escape to. But the book didn't end that way, so I don't believe that that's what happened. But I do see how people could think it.
Yeah. And people like to get dark with those theories. Like there was a similar one about Rugrats, right? Like all the babies were dead, and
Yes,
that's why the
and it was
grown-ups
like,
can't hear them or something.
or it was like Angelica was the only one that was alive,
Oh, yeah.
and that um, but all the other babies were dead, and yeah, it's really dark. But there's even conspiracies about Winnie the Pooh, like that they symbolize different drugs that, you know,
Mm.
Pooh has an eating disorder and Rabbit has OCD and Eeyore has depression and Piglet has anxiety. And so I do think that
Definitely interesting.
yeah, people do like to get dark with, and that Christopher Robin is schizophrenic and thinks that his stuffed animals talk to him. So people do definitely get dark. Um, it's always been everywhere. I think that, you know, another one that we're going to talk about later, Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, you know, simulates a drug trip. Whether that's true
Hmm.
or not, I don't know. I couldn't find anything to confirm that, but people are like, he was on LSD when he wrote it, which I don't know when LSD was created.
I don't think it existed then, but a lot of authors from his time period did smoke opium or drink real absinthe. Like the absinthe you can get nowadays, at least in the United States, doesn't have wormwood in it, which was the main hallucinogenic. But it's well known that Charles Dickens loved to drink absinthe and write.
Do they still sell the original type of absinthe in the UK?
I know they do some places in Europe. I'm not sure about the UK.
Oh, I think that would be really interesting to try.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I don't know when I'm going to. Well, I know when I'm going to Europe, but I don't know why I said the UK. I think that's just the first place that came to mind.
Yeah, we definitely have to go there too. Did you
Oh,
have other Harry Potter ones?
I thought this one was really cute that um Crookshanks was originally Lily Potter's cat.
Oh.
Yes, so I found this and it says that they think that because Crookshanks really hated Scabbers, aka Peter Pettigrew, and was always trying to get Scabbers, but they never talked about there were other rats and other Hedwig, cats attack birds and never attacked Hedwig, and that they think that I read two different ones actually that Crookshanks was reincarnated as Lily from Lily Potter, but also Lily Potter owned Crookshanks too. Because in the wizarding world, wizards live very old, so maybe cats do too. I just thought it was cute that, you know, maybe Crookshanks was Lily Potter or Lily Potter had owned the same cat that
That is
Hermione
cute to think
saved.
about.
Yeah.
Aw.
Oh, I want a big orange cat. I actually don't care what color it is. I want an animal.
It's funny, like I have a white and orange cat, but I hate orange cats. It's like the
Oh,
last thing I would choose.
oh.
I
And
don't know why.
I feel like I always had gray cats when I was growing up, and that's probably why I wouldn't choose a gray one.
Oh, I love gray cats.
Because we always had gray cats. I have a not a big scar. I still have scars on my wrist though from where I was attacked by a cat when I was
Mm-hmm.
like 7. No, I was a little older, like 8 or 9 years old. Um, as an adult, cats are vicious.
They sure can be.
And I was not like a crazy child, like just like
Mm-hmm.
running around like scaring cats for fun on purpose or on accident. I was a pretty mellow child, and I think this cat had been abused and then adopted by somebody, and so it was just very skittish of everyone.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you can't really blame the cat, but also fuck that cat.
I only wrote down one Harry Potter conspiracy theory, and I don't necessarily believe it, but it was so hilarious to me how hard some people go for this one that I had to talk about it. There's an entire website dedicated to it, and it's called Draco Malfoy is a werewolf.com.
I saw that one. That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. So, this is more based on the books than the movies. And this website, I believe, was created before the movie for Half Blood Prince came out. Um, but in Half Blood Prince, the book, we know that Draco was supposed to kill Dumbledore. So these people who created this website and the people who believe this conspiracy theory say that it's never said in the book that Draco became a Death Eater. Now, in the Half Blood Prince movie, he clearly has the death mark. Like he shows people, he shows Dumbledore it. So it's assumed he's a Death Eater. But in the book, there's a scene near the beginning where Harry Potter accidentally flew powders into Borgin and Burke's. I'm probably saying that wrong, but it's like a dark wizard shop in Nocturne Alley. And so he's hiding and he can hear Draco talking to the owner of the shop about something he needs. And the book describes that he pulls up his sleeve and show something on his arm, and the shopkeeper gets really scared and like does what he wants. And so the way they explained it is Harry jumps to conclusions all the time in the books, and it's always proven that he's wrong about it, right? Like he thought he was so sure in the first one that Snape was trying to get to the Sorcerer's Stone, and that wasn't true. And there's just multiple instances where he jumps to the wrong conclusion. So they were saying jumping to the conclusion that Draco was a Death Eater is proof that it's not true, which is silly. Um, but they say that when Voldemort in the book, when Voldemort heard of Tonk's pregnancy, Voldemort tells Draco, maybe you can babysit the cubs. So they think that's saying that Draco's part werewolf. Um, in Half Blood Prince, he's very sick. Like, and we can assume that he's sick from worry because he's got dragged into this by his family and he has to kill Dumbledore, or he probably thinks his parents are going to be killed. Um, but they also theorize that that's why he's so close with Snape because Snape is giving him wolf Spain potion so that he won't turn into a werewolf during the full moon. So that's like all the evidence they have, and I think it's pretty ridiculous. But the only thing that I can see why maybe they jumped to that conclusion is when Voldemort says maybe you can babysit the cubs. But I just take that as because Draco's a teenager, and that's like a stereotypical teenager job is babysitting.
Yeah, and because Remus Lupin is a werewolf, so he's making the joke that his children are going to be werewolves, or his
Mm-hmm.
child will be a werewolf. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny, and it would be funny on like a Reddit thread, but the fact that there's a whole ass website dedicated to this,
I know.
like, what are people
They're paying for
doing?
that URL every year. It's been up for a while.
That is so crazy to me. Like, oh my gosh. Oh,
There was one more tiny Harry Potter conspiracy, which I think is really funny. And it's that Harry Potter is real, the wizarding world is real, and um J.K. Rowling is actually Rita Skeeter.
I read that one, and I actually read one that is very similar into parallel that Harry Potter is real, that George Weasley, after losing his brother, couldn't cope, so he became Willy Wonka. And and the things that are in Willy Wonka, they couldn't have been created by muggles. The fizzy lifting drink,
Oh.
the gum that turned her into a blueberry. Though, and I think that kind of makes sense because those are kind of prankish, like they were still trying to work out the kinks, but then at the same time I could see George doing those things to kids because he's still a prankster.
That's hilarious. See, those are the kind of conspiracies I like that are just like funny and silly and are like believable enough where you're like, huh.
Yeah, like it is really cool. Like I love to think that and that Harry Potter is real and that we are just muggles, but that doesn't mean we can't still love magic just because we're muggles.
Yep. But
Oh,
makes me wish I married a wizard.
I know. Me too. At least so my kid could have been magical. Well, the next one I have a couple about Stephen King. Have you heard any of these that the FBI or the CIA hired Stephen King to kill John Lennon?
No.
Yeah, there is like a bunch of different information on why he why they had him do it, but let me look it up real quick. There is a whole Wikipedia page just to the murder of John Lennon.
Yeah.
Mark David Chapman is his name, and people say that Stephen King looks like Mark David Chapman, basically. Like they both are about the same age, white men with brown hair and glasses, which is a stretch. I can name like 50 people off the top of my head that look like that would fit that description. And I think that people can just take nothing and make it into something that they look similar, so the FBI must have hired him because he had already written Carrie and The Shining. Like he was already like famous when John Lennon was shot and killed.
Hmm.
So I just think it's funny that people can spin a yarn because there's nothing really backing that up besides the fact that they look alike.
It's funny. I mean, there's probably some conspiracy theories about Stephen King that might be more believable because the stuff he writes is freaking dark. And the amount that he writes, like
Yeah.
1,000-page books. And how many books has he read? I'm looking at, he has written 63 books so far and around 120 short stories and 20 novellas, which are like tiny books. That is a lot.
Yeah, it really is. I I don't
Maybe
think
he's
I've
a
act
vampire.
Maybe he's gonna
I
outlive
think
us
I saw
all.
that one.
Oh, that is so funny because this one I think is funny, um, because it has to do with Stephen King also, but that um, basically the director of The Shining um, was Stanley Kubrick, and he directed The Shining, but they're saying that he directed The Shining because he faked the moon landing and it was an apology to the people. So he gave them this masterpiece
Oh my goodness.
that I mean The Shining is a really scary and good movie. Um but I don't think the I don't think he faked the moon landing.
No.
But I think it's because he did put out a movie a year or two, or maybe it was just a television show or program, like a year or two before the moon landing that was space themed. And people were like, oh, he already had all the sets built and he had this and that. And he faked the moon landing for NASA to get, everyone's mind off of I don't know what was going on at that time that was
Kind
big,
of the
but
Cold War.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was
And
to
Vietnam, right?
yeah, to get more people interested in NASA and, you know, and to not focus on wars and, poverty and racism. And I don't think that that was the case. I do think we went to the moon, and I don't think that The Shining was enough of like I just don't see how somebody could just be like, I need to apologize to America. Here's this movie.
So here is my personal opinion on the moon landing. Do I think we really went to the moon? Yes. But do I think it's possible that we faked the footage because we didn't have the technology capable of showing it? Yes. Because why is and this is the only thing that really made me think that. Why is the flag billowing in the wind? There's no wind on the moon.
That is true. Because I'm not quite sure how the gravity would work with fabric and no gravity.
True. And someone said that they saw Neil Armstrong on Earth like a few hours after that aired online. And it is totally possible that he really did go to the moon and we just didn't have the technology capable of showing it. And they knew Americans won't believe it unless they see it.
Yeah. Because they do say that our cell phones now have more computing capabilities than the first rocket ship.
Wow.
So I'm not sure because they were making movies in the 60s and 70s but people didn't really it was a big production type of thing. Like even what people could buy for their homes were very expensive and they were very, very
Hmm.
large. And I just don't see a movie camera and somebody that's trained to operate it also going to space.
Yeah.
So I do believe that we have been to space and I
Hmm.
hope that someday we'll live in space. But
Oh, yeah.
also, why have we never really gone back to the have we gone back to the moon? I haven't heard anything about people going back to the moon.
I know other countries did after us, but I don't know if the US has gone back. That's a good question. I know we've sent rovers and stuff to continue collecting samples.
But
But
when
yeah, it's not like the space station, a lot more people go to space stations in space than the moon.
yeah, but the space station is literally just like right outside the atmosphere.
Yeah,
Like it's not space like the moon is space. So
right.
I feel like why have we not gone back when you could I feel like yes, there are rovers that can collect data and samples, but I feel like some with anything you should still, go check it out for yourself once every, 20 years or something.
Oh my gosh. 9 hours ago, Yahoo News posted an article called "Did NASA Forget How to Put People on the Moon?" So you're not the only one wondering that.
Me and Yahoo, yes. Like, I just feel like there are machines that can do surgery on people, heart surgery, but there's still somebody physically there to, make sure it doesn't malfunction. So I just feel
Oh my
like
God.
I
You're
feel like
right. You're
there
blowing my mind.
I just feel like maybe once every 10 or 15 years somebody should physically go there and make sure there's not like, I don't know.
Aliens.
Yeah, maybe
The
there are.
last time a person visited the moon was December of 1972.
And that was like 25 years before we were born.
Astronauts say the reasons humans haven't returned are budgetary and political, not scientific or technical. I don't believe that. They're trying to get us to Mars, and that's a lot farther and a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
But it sounds like NASA's trying to bring a person back to the moon by 2025.
But do you really think that they haven't said anything and they're just gonna launch somebody into space with no like hype in 2 years?
Well, and that could be the blame of the media because when I put have people gone back to the moon, the first thing that comes up is a nasa.gov link about NASA Artemis, which is the um thing they're trying to plan.
Oh, well, that's
But
good.
it's not something that you see on the news and stuff.
No, because I watch the news now at work. I never did
Mhm.
before, but I turn on MSNBC every day. Well, I watch Good Morning America and then I turn on MSNBC. Um, because let me tell you, the doctor that I share an office with in the back, like we have a door, he came over to do something on the TV because something wasn't working and he left it on Fox News. I said,
You.
absolutely not. I turned it back to MSNBC. I said, uh-uh.
Oh my goodness.
I
That's
said, all
funny.
right, I know what kind of person you are coming in here, turning it off of the Today
Boomer.
Show. Yeah. Oh. So yeah, I thought that
Funny.
was funny that um apparently Stephen King killed John Lennon, which ties me into the next one that the man that killed John Lennon, Mark David Chapman, killed John Lennon. This is proven, this is nothing new. But he very identified with the narrator of The Catcher in the Rye. I have never read The Catcher in the Rye, but I know it was a very popular book, very known. I know of Catcher in the Rye, I just have never read it. And he was found with a copy of his book in which he had written, "This is my statement," and signed Holden's name. He was not the only killer that was found with Catcher in the Rye when they were arrested. Um, when John Hinckley Jr. tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan in 1981, police found the Catcher in the Rye in his hotel room. And he Hinckley admitted later that he admired Chapman and studying his attempt on John Lennon, uh, he ended up getting the novel himself and was influenced by it. And then also Robert John Bardo, who murdered Rebecca Schaefer, he was carrying it on him when he went to Rebecca Schaefer's house and murdered her in 1989.
JFK's killer, I read, had the book in his apartment. So he didn't have it on him like these other people did, but it's still pretty creepy.
Yes, actually, it looks like Lee Harvey Oswald, who killed JFK, um, in a raid in his Dallas apartment following the assassinations. Catcher in the Rye, along with books like George Orwell's Animal Farm and Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf were found. So this narrator of Catcher in the Rye, he I don't I guess I don't really know what Catcher in the Rye's about. I just have heard about it, but I don't think it's somebody out there murdering people.
I think I tried to read it and I ended up donating it because I just couldn't get into it. But now I want to try getting through it again because maybe there's something I'm not seeing. But I think it's about a teenage boy who is very openly speaks out against the system. The reason it was banned in a lot of schools is because he talks poorly about his teachers and other members of authority and cusses. But I think it's written from an insane asylum or a hospital.
Oh, yeah, because this just says one sentence summary. The Catcher in the Rye describes the adventures of well-off teenage boy Holden Caulfield on a weekend out alone in New York City, illuminating the struggles of young adults with existential questions of morality, identity, meaning, and connection.
I mean, and it was so popular for a reason. Um, and it's cool that lots of people can relate to it, but it's very weird that a lot of assassinations or attempted assassinations are linked to it. And I even read that John Lennon's killer, a day or two before he committed the murder, he had tried to legally change his name to Holden, whatever.
I really liked the name Holden. I wanted to
It
name
is a
my
good
son
name.
that. My husband said no, but I do really like it. It was originally published July 16th, 1951. That was a very long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking about how times have changed since the 50s, even the 80s when
Mm-hmm.
John Lennon was killed.
And Rebecca Schaefer.
Yes.
And they were still holding on to it when they committed those crimes. That's crazy.
Yeah, because I do believe that John Lennon's killer, Chapman, he was living in Hawaii and he flew to New York to kill John Lennon.
Wow.
And so
That's crazy.
I watched a documentary about him and his wife still lives in Hawaii. So it's he traveled all the way, like halfway across the world, basically. New York City from Hawaii is halfway across the world, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the 80s, people weren't traveling like they do now with all their stuff, like me. Um, so he must have thought it was important enough to take it with him. And the the man that killed Rebecca Schaefer, he carried it with him from his house to her house to kill her.
And it said, I read that when he was running away from the crime scene, he took the book and tossed it onto a roof as he was running away. Like he thought that would be evidence of something. Like you're not going to get in trouble for having a book on you unless there's something in that book that I don't know. It's weird.
Unless it's like the anarchist cookbook.
Well, that is kind of another layer to this conspiracy theory that I saw is that some people think Catcher in the Rye was written for this purpose, or it's possible that the CIA used this book that was written by somebody else and took phrases from it so that what do you call an assassin or a spy who's been brainwashed but will respond to code words? There's a certain name for it, but I can't remember what it is.
Huh, I don't know either.
Like sleeping agents or something like that. And then when they hear or read the code word or phrase, they like turn back on and you can use them to kill people. And so some people think the CIA used certain sentences from Catcher in the Rye to do that to people, and that John Lennon's murder might have been one of those people. Because at this time, John Lennon was talking about like peace and anti government message and things like that.
Yes, it is a sleeper agent. I just looked it,
Sleeper.
but I had never heard that. But that is so crazy that there is like mind control and
Oh,
like
I know.
especially in the CIA or oh, don't even get me started on the things that, they've done. I even read one about they had incorporated The Shining that allegedly, um, but just the types of experiments like with LSD, not telling. If I started tripping on LSD and didn't know I'd taken LSD, I would jump out a window too.
Right? It's so scary to think of everything we don't know, too.
I know.
Ugh.
I mean, they're already listening. I'm talking to you on my computer, and there are things that we talk about when I'm on my computer that you say out loud that I don't. And I wear headphones that my phone will pick up. And it's just so
Mm-hmm.
creepy that, or we've already talked about all of it, but just the TV will pop up and start listening and oh, the CIA,
We
crazy.
were recording a couple weeks ago and you said, I need to go to CVS. And your Siri was like, which CVS?
Yes, on my watch ended up just popping up and saying which CVS. So
And you didn't
creepy.
say, hey, Siri.
No, I just said
Oh, my phone just went off now.
because I don't have Siri turned on my phone.
That is super creepy.
Yes, because I was talking in the past tense of like I was telling a story and I was like, "Oh,"
Mm-hmm.
I said to myself, "I need to go to CVS." And my watch was just like, "Which CVS?" Like they're listening even when you tell them not to. And I know that and I still have the stuff because I'm not doing anything crazy out here. So,
Yeah.
it's uh, but that's also creepy about my that somebody had Mein Kampf. I did read, I think it was last year, um, the copyright to Mein Kampf expired because there were no
Oh.
errors for it. I think after, I forget what it's called, but basically after a long, long period of time, a copyright will expire if nobody renews it, basically. And since Hitler doesn't have any heirs or people that will claim to be heirs, related to Hitler, that it expired. So now it's like anyone can use it, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and not get in trouble for distribution.
Nope. Yeah, Winnie the Pooh became public domain a couple years ago, so we could literally make all the tea we cannot sip t-shirts and put Winnie the Pooh on it and we can't get sued.
Is that the old Winnie the Pooh? Because I feel like
Yes, the
Disney,
original.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
feel like,
can't take Disney's drawings, but Disney cannot own the name Winnie the Pooh or any of the characters.
huh,
So
that's
I
interesting.
could even write a new Winnie the Pooh story using all those characters and all those names of places like Hundred Acre Woods and stuff, and it's totally legal.
That's really cool. I think
Mm-hmm.
that was the word I forgot, public domain. But yeah, Mein Kampf is now too. Not that I'm
Creepy.
trying to read it, but
We had to read part of that in a high school history class. And now looking back, I'm like, that would never fly today. I
and it's not like
hope.
we went to school in like the 1970s. This
No.
was like well past the year 2000.
Jeez.
I think I did try to read it at one point in high school for something, and I was just like, no, I'll read some Cliff Notes or something.
I don't know. I wasn't into it. And like the few sentences I read, it was nothing
Yeah,
cool or exciting
I
or
think I
interesting.
tried to because I thought it might be interesting because I'm very interested in the Holocaust and World War II,
Mm-hmm.
but it really doesn't have any. It's the ramblings of a madman, basically.
Yeah.
So, oh,
Well, speaking about craziness and madmen, this is like the biggest conspiracy theory that I researched, and I have more info on this one because it is so old and people have been talking about it for literally centuries now. And I first heard about this conspiracy theory in college because I think I've told you before about that really hot Elizabethan English teacher I had who would recite us sonnets and stuff. And oh God, he was so hot. But he had us research this ourselves. And the conspiracy is that William Shakespeare wasn't real, like he didn't exist, or he did exist, but he didn't actually write anything. And there are a few different theories, and this has been talked about for so long that there are even famous people who spoke out about it and believed it, including Charlie Chaplin, the famous silent movie actor, and Mark Twain.
Wow.
Um, right? So William Shakespeare did exist. William Kimberly Shakespeare, there's a baptismal record of him from 1565, and there's a death record in 1616. So we know that someone named William Shakespeare really did exist, and that age 18, he married Anne Hathaway, which I thought was pretty funny. No relation, but what are the odds? And they had 3 children. We know that just from documents. So there are 6 known signatures from William Shakespeare that exist on legal documents. Now, they're not documents that have anything to do with writing. They are like legal documents about like property that was owned and things like that. Now, here's the weird thing. I'm going to send you a picture. None of these signatures look the same, which happened back then because a lot of people were illiterate back then and couldn't even write their own name. So a lot of times in legal documents, the bank clerks or lawyers would sign the name. In these 6 signatures, they not only look different, but William Shakespeare is spelled differently in them, which makes people think that he didn't sign his own name. Now, that would make sense for the average Joe, but not for someone who supposedly wrote 39 plays and over 150 sonnets, couldn't write his own name. So let me send you the picture and tell me what you think. What's also interesting to me is that William Shakespeare's parents were illiterate. And
Huh.
he only went to school until age 13.
I,
Um,
yeah, I definitely have heard, lots of people did not know how to sign their own name, and that a lot of people, even up into the 1800s, would just write
mhm.
X and as in front of a witness, like a lawyer or a banker, and that was just all their signatures.
Right.
Huh. I was thinking that maybe you know, it's not like today where we can go grab a pen out of our purse or off our desk and just sign our name. You have to get ink from a well, like an ink well, and then get a quill or some type of writing utensil, and maybe they were different, but no, these are two different.
Yes. We'll put the picture up on our video. They definitely look different, and the spelling is different, which, like I said, maybe that means someone else signed his name, but why wouldn't he be able to sign his own name if he was this well-known writer? There are also 75 known documents that mention this William Kimberly Shakespeare. They're legal and financial documents, and they describe him as a cold, successful local business man and property developer. None of them mention this William being an author anywhere. Now, he had this William Shakespeare also had a will when he died. It only mentioned properties that he owned. It didn't mention any writing or plays,
Oh,
including plays that were unpublished at the time of his death. There is only one known letter written to William Shakespeare ever to have been found, and he may have never even received it. It was a request from someone he knew to help raise money to pay this man's debt. It doesn't mention writings or plays or being a fan of his, anything like that. Another thing that makes me think this is really weird is that after his death, none of his actual writing was found. Not one sonnet, not one letter, not one play outline anywhere in this William Shakespeare's home. Now, as I said before, William Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway had 3 daughters. These daughters were illiterate. So, how would this man who had illiterate parents, because we know William Shakespeare's parents were illiterate and he only went to school until he was 13, but how would he be able to write all this stuff and then not teach his daughters?
yeah, because I feel, especially back in the old timey days, that even if somebody came from a poor background and had parents that were illiterate, if they became literate and famous or had money, they continued that up the line and taught their
Right?
children.
Right? And this isn't like I think of Vincent van Gogh who painted so much in his lifetime, but spent his whole life really poor until the day he died. Like Vincent van Gogh did not become famous until after death. But we know that William Shakespeare's work was popular while he was alive. Like his plays, lots of people went to see them and he was very popular at the time, or his writing was, because we don't know if this man actually wrote them, right? So another thing that's weird is when this William Shakespeare died, there was no public mourning or eulogies. Nobody wrote about him in newspapers or anything like that.
That is so weird that nobody mourned him openly because I feel like big funerals, big mourning periods have been around since the beginning of time. King Charles II, that's just the first name I thought of. But, like people were putting on these stage productions of this man's supposed work, and nobody's going to credit him after his death and be like, oh, the great late William Shakespeare has passed away.
Right. That
And
was the thing that was made me believe it the most too, was that after his death, there wasn't just there was no record of anything he wrote. Like there is nothing in his handwriting. None of his plays, none of his sonnets anywhere have ever been found. And since he was so popular, I feel like that would be in museums and stuff. Or his daughters would have sent it to famous people who were fans of his, you know?
yeah, like the king. I don't know. But
Yeah,
I just feel uh, my theory that makes something I'm thinking is that he stole the works from somebody or paid somebody to do it for him, and it never came out who was actually writing it, you know?
good theory. So there are multiple theories of who William Shakespeare could have been, and I wrote down three that I thought were the most promising or the most interesting. So one is named Christopher Marlowe. Now, nowadays he's getting a lot more attention for the things he wrote in his lifetime. Christopher Marlowe was a very educated man. He was born the same year as Shakespeare, and he wrote many plays before Shakespeare wrote anything that was popular. So people think even if he wasn't Shakespeare, that Shakespeare was a fan of his because some of Shakespeare's work, such as Merchant of Venice, doesn't copy Christopher Marlowe's work, but it's very similar. It seems inspired by. And Christopher Marlowe, at age 29, was stabbed in a bar fight, and they say he died. Well, some people think that due to his popularity from the writing he had done so far, that he faked his death and went into hiding and used a fake name to write. And
Huh.
maybe he knew William Shakespeare, maybe he knew the real William Shakespeare, like maybe they had worked together in the past, or maybe they had been neighbors or something. We don't really know. Um, but
Do they
it's true. Maybe William Shakespeare agreed to let some ghostwriter use his name.
do they know why he might have faked his own death?
Um, no,
Hmm.
because I don't even know who stabbed him. But at the point where he died, he had already published several popular plays. Oh, and I forgot to point this out, but William Kimberly Shakespeare also had tried to be an actor before he wrote anything. Now, was he a fan of Christopher Marlowe? And did Christopher Marlowe say, "Hey, um, I'm going into hiding and I still have all these ideas of things I want to write. Do you want to work with me or can I use your name?" Because also, where did this William Shakespeare, who is on 75 documents and known as a local property developer, where did he get that kind of money with a 13-year-old education?
Yeah.
That's shady to me too. So Christopher Marlowe is one that a lot of people believe. Another possibility is Edward. de Vere, who was born in 1550. He was the 17th Earl of Oxford. So he was highly educated. His father died when he was 2, and he actually became a ward of the first Queen Elizabeth. Um, and he was briefly exiled by the queen when he had a bastard child with one of her maids of honor in 1580. So he was 30 years old. But after he died, they found multiple poems and plays that he had written and that they were really good. And so and a lot of the places in Shakespeare's plays and sonnets, like a lot of the real places are places that we know historically this Earl of Oxford really did go. So it would be something he knew firsthand. And also being close to Queen Elizabeth and her family, a lot of Shakespearean plays are written about English monarchy. So people think he hid his identity to keep his reputation as an earl when really his love was writing.
Hmm, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Now, the funniest one to me is the theory that Queen Elizabeth herself wrote the plays and sonnets, because so much of the plays were about her own family, like Henry V, Richard III, Henry VIII, who was her dad, King John. All of these plays that Shakespeare wrote were about her family, and she would have known that history more than most people. Also, she funded a lot of Shakespeare's plays to be put on stage. We know that, even though they say she herself never went to a play of his. And as I was researching this one, I didn't know. I mean, they call her the Virgin Queen. She never married and she was childless, but I didn't know that she wrote passionate love letters to her female cousins in her lifetime, and those have been uncovered. And there's a theory that she was obsessed with her cousin Mary of Scots, and that she
Oh.
may have been a lesbian and used a male name to write all this stuff and hide her identity because it wouldn't have been accepted for the queen to do it. I think that's the least likely, um, but I thought it was funny.
Which it kind of makes sense because if you think of stories like Romeo and Juliet, it's about lovers that can never be, which
Right.
I, being the queen and also being a lesbian, I'm sure that's very, very frowned upon.
That's what I was thinking.
Because nowadays, that it was her cousin is icky, but
Mm-hmm.
in the 1500s, it was common, especially for royals, to
Oh yeah.
marry and procreate with their bloodline to keep it pure. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think not even the cousin part was the bad part. I think it was the lesbian part, which I mean,
Yeah.
that makes sense. But also, I think it was probably the first one. It could have been the second one, but I think it was the first one.
Right. He was born the same year as William Shakespeare, and there's a lot of parallels in between their two writing. Guys, this is Clover. I did some more research on Christopher Marlowe as I was editing. I don't know why this didn't come up in my initial research of him, but there is evidence that he may have become a government spy during his years at university, which would have not only given people motive to murder him, but it would have given him motive to possibly fake his own death and write as William Shakespeare. I just thought that was interesting to add and gives us more to think about. I don't know, but I thought it was very fascinating.
Yeah, because how could they not find anything in his house? It's not like his daughters could have read
Yes,
it. And it's not like
right?
nowadays where something could be saved on a hard drive and then, tossed out. Like,
And how can his will only mention property, but not the writing itself?
yeah,
Because,
that's
like,
so crazy.
nowadays, if, like you're saying, someone writes a book that's really popular, the family has rights to the copyright.
Yeah.
Very
Oh,
strange. Very strange.
oh. Well, I had one that I was going to talk about. It was about Lewis Carroll. who was actually born. His real name is Charles Dodson. Dodge? Yeah,
I
Dogson.
didn't know that.
Yeah. Um, he wrote Alice in Wonderland, and there are speculations that Alice was based on a friend's daughter. He had a friend who had this little girl. I read a bunch about Lewis Carroll or Charles Dodson. Um, he never married. He never had any children of his own. He actually took a he took a vow of celibacy when he graduated college. He graduated from some Christian college and took a vow of celibacy. And he never
What?
married, never had his own children. And so uh, it said like other bachelors around that time, he was basically like an uncle to all of his friends' kids, the fun uncle that told stories and, would play outside and take them on boat rides. And he had a friend who had a daughter that was her name was Alice, but when Lewis Carroll met her, she was about 8 years old. And it is said that it was kind of like a Lolita that we talked about this last podcast, where he was infatuated with her from a very young age. And this was, the mid 1800s, and he was Lewis Carroll was very big into photography, which was very, very new and very like it was very high tech at the time. This says, although the camera was still a relatively new technology, he had been an early enthusiast starting in 1856, and he found no shortage of friends who wanted him to make likeness of them or their children. And then it goes on to say, of the approximately 3,000 photographs Dodson made in his life, over half are children, 30 of whom are depicted nude or semi-nude. Some of his portraits, even those in which the model is clothed, might shock 2010 sensibilities, but by Victorian standards, they were, well, rather conventional. Photographs of nude children sometimes appeared on postcards, on birthday cards, and nude portraits skillfully done were praised. So
Yikes.
he
How
was
many thousands of photos did he have?
3,000 in his collection when he
Oh
died,
my gosh.
and over half of them were of children. And I think when it says 30, it was 30 different children, not 30 pictures, but 30 different
Mm-hmm.
children in various states of undress that were his friends'
Yikes.
kids. And his actual diaries that he wrote, his niece, he had two nieces, they like ripped pages out of it that some people think shine him in the not best light of how he felt about Alice and what his real thoughts were about his friend's children. Because I did read that Alice's father, he found it odd. He found it weird that his friend only wanted to hang out with his children because he had four children, I believe, but he kind of pulled away his relationship and letting his children hang out with Lewis Carroll because he just found it odd that his friend wouldn't want to hang out with him, but would want to hang out with his young children around, 10, 11 years old.
I'm seeing a couple pictures of him with Alice when she was a kid, and they do look creepy. Like just him with her on his lap, or him with her holding her hand. And didn't pictures take a long time? Like you had to sit for an hour?
Yeah, and there's like one where he has her like dressed like in like she's dirty and her clothes are ripped and she's like homeless, and it's just it's weird that like he there are some people that say that the actual characterization of the book Alice is not the same as Alice in real life, but it's very similar to her sister.
Mm,
So to me, that means it still has to be similar to Alice because genetically that's her sister. So there has
mm-hmm,
to be something, whether it's, maybe the real Alice had dark hair and her sister had light hair like the cartoon or, the
mm-hmm,
book. So I it was the picture thing that really did it for me because I'm like, yeah, there are people who just really like kids. Like
mm-hmm,
I know sometimes like my husband like if there's a baby on TV, we were watching the Aaron Carter documentary that came out on Hulu today, and Aaron Carter's baby was on, and he was like, "That is such a cute kid. Like I want that
mm,
kid." But it's just because he loves cute kids. Like he thought that about
mm-hmm,
our kids, and it's just there are people that really like kids. But then when you find out that there are all these pictures of these kids either semi-nude or nude. And
mm-hmm,
even if it was, you know, even if they did postcards, the fact that he had these in his personal collection and it wasn't like a marketing thing,
right,
because even like the copper tone girl for the
yeah,
sunscreen has her butt out, and like that's cute, or at the time it was cute. I don't know if I would still call it cute, but like the dog is biting it down, but that was marketable. The fact that he just had them privately, and like you pointed out that I didn't even think about, they had to stand there for a long time. And the fact that he had written in his personal diaries enough that his own family decided to destroy it, like parts of it.
right,
Like not all of it, there are still parts of it, which actually kind of ties into another conspiracy theory I read about Lewis Carroll, that he was actually Jack the Ripper, and that there are um hidden hidden messages in the original Alice book. It was just called like Alice, I think. Um but I don't really believe that's true that he's Jack the Ripper. They never found out who Jack the Ripper was, but
so
I
that
just
means
think
we don't know.
yeah, I mean, it could be they were never able to find out who did it, and they probably never will now, like
That's
in
creepy.
the 1850s. Like, but the fact that there are people that will still do that for their family, like just throw away evidence, burn it, hide it,
Right?
so we never will
Yikes.
know.
And especially because his writing was so popular in his lifetime. So there might have been incentive to protect the estate because he didn't have kids. So who did all that money go to? Probably
Very
his
true.
nieces.
Yeah, because he had like 11 brothers. His parents had 11 kids, so he had 10 brothers
Wow.
and sisters. So, I mean, when you're fighting for wealth, you want to
Yeah.
try to hide the dirty things.
Well, I had two more really short ones that are lighter hearted. I thought this one was really cute because it combined two things I love. So the Titanic sank in 1912, and The Great Gatsby was published in 1925, so 13 years later. And if you haven't read The Great Gatsby, it centers around this man named Jay Gatsby, who is a millionaire in the 1920s in this like posh place in New York. And he throws these huge parties, but he doesn't really partake in them. And nobody really knows how he got rich. And there's all these different stories and rumors going around. So, this conspiracy is that Jack from the Titanic was real and he survived the ship sinking and he became Jay from The Great Gatsby. And Jay could just be J for Jack.
Oh.
And the timing would be right because Jack was like 18. So 13 years later, he would be in his 30s, just like Gatsby was.
Yeah.
I just thought that one was cute. And especially since Jack in Titanic was played by Leo DiCaprio, and Leonardo DiCaprio did play Jay Gatsby in the Great Gatsby movie, which is an amazing movie if you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen The Great Gatsby.
It's so colorful and it's well done. Even if you haven't read the book, I think you'd like the movie.
I think I will try to watch it. I've been doing good about watching new movies lately. Like the
Yeah.
past couple months I've been on a roll, so I'll pick a new one. We did see the new Mario movie in theaters. That was cute.
That was cute. It
Oh,
was so colorful.
I know. I loved the mushrooms.
So cute. I want to live there for sure.
Me too. Oh, we have to go. I think it's at Universal Hollywood. They are opening a Mario Land.
Oh, that would be fun.
That would be a lot of fun. Even though I love Universal Orlando.
Yeah, it is better compared to the California one. It has more Harry Potter stuff.
I know, which is so funny. I told you this that I didn't answer the phone for that job when they called because I was in line waiting for the Hogwarts Express, and I didn't want to say that. Like, I didn't want them to think I was crazy because they don't know where I'm at, and I could just be waiting for the bus and calling it the Hogwarts Express. But I loved riding the Hog. We rode it twice.
Oh,
Um,
that's
because we
awesome.
rode it to Diagon Alley and then back when we were done on that side of the park. But it was so cool how they had the shadows, and I just thought it was so cool.
Amazing. I definitely need to go back.
Me too. We are planning to take our son later this year. I don't know if it's the summer or at the end of the year around Christmas, but either way, I
I
loved it.
did suggest to my husband that we move to Orlando when our son graduates high school solely so I can work at Universal Studios or at least live close enough where I can go all the time. And it wasn't an outright no, so the seed is planted.
Yes.
He was thinking about it.
And we ended up getting the year pass because we were able to get it through a discount and it was a little bit more expensive, but only like $30 more per ticket. So it's not that expensive to get a year pass
No.
and just
When
go every weekend.
Yeah, when we visited, there were people like we talked to who live there, and they said they just get a yearly pass. And one of the ladies who went on this, because we took a tour bus too that took us to Clearwater Beach, so we didn't have to drive all that way in a state that we didn't know. And it was a really good deal. I would do that again. And she said she literally moved to Orlando to be by Universal Studios and has a yearly pass.
Exact.
Like
I know
goals.
I know somebody, my friend, her mother-in-law moved from around where we live in the Midwest to Orlando so that she could work part-time at Disney because she retired because she loves
That's
Disney World.
awesome.
And
Yes.
I would definitely move there. It's actually, I was looking at apartments. It's not that bad compared to California or,
No.
Oregon, like Portland or Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And we would get skinny because I walked like I walked like over almost 9 miles in one day.
Oh, yeah. And I don't think it would get old. There's so much to do, and I love rides.
Me too. We got the fast pass because we were on a little bit of a time crunch. It was so worth
Mm-hmm.
it.
Oh, that's so awesome.
The only one we couldn't use it on was the Hagrid ride, but I didn't care because that ride was so amazing.
I loved it.
Oh, me
The
too.
baby unicorn.
I know. Which I did tell you. They did make us like try the seat thing step out of line and like make sure we fit in the seat. We're not that big. But anyway,
Mm-mm.
we got to skip like 70 people after we did that. So I said, they can have my dignity. I'm going to the front of the line. I don't
I
care.
love it.
Because I fit in every other ride. Like nobody else made me try the seat, and that seat's not smaller than the Hulk. So because I
Did you
did,
ride the motorcycle or the sidecar?
I rode the motorcycle, and my husband rode the
Oh,
sidecar.
nice.
Yes, he knew how excited I was, and he's like, "You could do it. You can ride the motorcycle."
That's so sweet.
It was. I definitely would have done it again, but the line was like a 75-minute wait.
Yeah.
And when there's so much to do and see, you cannot. Oh, well, I was gonna bring up my last one that I had. I actually looked up some Twilight conspiracy theories, but you heard the one that Edward was not the one that turned Bella into a vampire?
No.
There are people that think Renesmee turned Bella into a vampire when she was being born. It says the pregnancy does a lot of
Oh,
damage to Bella's body, but Edward injects her with the venom in time. However, you can hear a crunch right before Renesmee is taken away from Bella, and people on the internet think that Renesmee is the one who turned Bella into a vampire.
that's fascinating. Huh.
I know.
Interesting.
Yeah, there were a bunch of silly ones like that in Twilight vampires are fairy. They're not vampires in the sense, but they're more like the vampires in Twilight are actually fairies, citing their glittery skin and preference for living in the woods as reasons. In addition, a Sith is a creature found in Scottish and Gaelic folklore, as well as in Star Wars. In particular, a Bohan Sith has vampiric characteristics and consume blood. In that, given that werewolves and vampires exist in the same universe, it's not that far fetched in theory that other paranormal creatures exist as well.
Hmm. That's interesting.
So that since they do have the glittery skin, and because when you see like True Blood, the vampires that they portray are more traditional in the sense of folklore, but in
Mm-hmm.
Twilight they do try they basically stay away from other humans, and then they keep to themselves in the woods and they glitter in the sun. And there are fairies that drink blood, according to the Scottish,
Interesting. Huh.
which is fine by me. I like fairies just as much as I like vampires.
Me too. I had one more. Again, just a little one that made me go, huh. And I thought you would like it too. So in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf the wizard tells Frodo that his parents were killed in a boating accident when Frodo was 12. And this theory is that Gollum actually killed Frodo's parents because Bilbo, Frodo's uncle, had taken the ring and Gollum wanted revenge and heard um, Frodo Baggins's last name and went after his parents.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. Well, I don't like
Right?
that, but I like it in the sense of it's really interesting and fun to think about. Not that, like, I hope Gollum was out there just murking people for revenge, which I know in Lord of the Rings when I watch it. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my to-do this year. I feel really sad for Smeagol. Not Gollum, but
Yeah.
Smeagol, and just the fact that he tries to be better in part of it. And, even at the end, which I will say spoilers, but it's Lord of the Rings, that's 20 years old,
Mm,
that, even Frodo doesn't want to give up the ring, and the only reason why it happens is because it's knocked out of his hands basically by Sam
hmm
into Mordor, and that Smeagol had had this ring for so long, and Frodo had only had it like I don't know how much time passes in Lord of the Rings, but let's just say a year.
I think it was so The Hobbit takes place on Bilbo's 50th birthday, and Lord of the Rings is his 111th
111th.
birthday.
Yes.
Yeah, so 61 years right there. But and I think that's what Frodo was supposed to make us feel bad for Gollum. Um, but then I come back to how, well, as soon as Smeagol saw the ring, he was willing to murder for it, right?
Mhm.
And that was
Yeah.
before he had even touched it.
Yes, that's so true. And what I don't like is that Sam is supposed to be Frodo's really good friend, and he's helping him on this really hard thing, and he's telling his best friend, "You should not trust this person. I do not trust this person. He's going to betray us. Let's leave him. And say and Frodo is just like, "No, I would be so mad if I was telling you like in my heart like I do not trust this person and you were just like we need him. He needs
I
us."
think I think they weren't as close friends in the beginning as they ended up becoming. Wasn't Sam like his gardener?
Yeah.
And Sam had to be taken along because he had overheard Frodo and Gandalf talking.
But
I
I
don't
feel
think they ended up being best friends, but I don't think they started off that way.
but I feel like by the time they found Gollum in the second movie, they were pretty good friends cuz Sam had almost drowned himself
Yeah.
for Frodo and Frodo was still like, "No, we're going to take
Yeah,
him."
Frodo's one of those characters that like one of those main characters that is not the best character. Like Bella from Twilight. Like
Yes. I
she's
remember
not the best character even though she's the main character.
Oh, I know. I remember when I watched Lord of the Rings for the first time, I told my husband, I said, I hope people don't think Frodo's the hero of the story. And that was before it
Mhm.
was over. I was just like, man, like, I mean, Bilbo had the ring for what, 60 plus years, and he didn't act like that. I know that he was
Mhm.
stabbed by you know, the thing and that never healed or whatever, but Gollum, like you said, killed for it the instant he saw it. And then,
Mhm.
you know, Frodo was very affected by it, but Bilbo wasn't. Bilbo was a
Yeah.
better hero than Frodo.
I finally read The Hobbit as an adult. I remember having to read it in middle school, but I didn't retain anything and I didn't enjoy it. This time around, I loved it. I haven't read Lord of the Rings. I've only seen the movies. Like you, I want to read them, but they're so freaking long. But you
I,
should read The Hobbit. It's short, it's sweet, and Bilbo's so likable in it.
uh,
And Gandalf is so funny.
I think I will. There's another book I just finished. She's Come Undone. I think everyone should read that. If you're listening to this podcast, you definitely should. It's by an author called Wally Lamb. It was written in 1992, so it's a little bit politically incorrect or
Hmm.
incorrect um, nowadays, but it's still a really good book. But he has another book, but it's over 900 pages,
Oh my gosh.
and I bought it at the Goodwill like 10 years ago, and I have not started it because it's 900 pages. So
Right?
there's so many. I could read four books that are 300 pages or
Right.
three and a half that are a little bit less. It's just that's so many. Like that's so much. So we might see. It's like I guess they made an HBO miniseries about this book. I forget what it's called, even though I own it. But
Huh.
we will see if I read it. I know I have. I think it's called This Much Is True, and they were both of Wally Lamb's books were Oprah book club books.
Hmm.
So I don't know who. who Oprah was thinking is going to read 900 pages. Because She's Come Undone is long. It's like over 400.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe closer to 500, which I could read Harry Potter again.
I know, right?
Oh,
Well, it looks like the Lord of the Rings series is over 1,200 pages total, but that seems more doable.
it does. I don't know how they got 3 movies out of the Hobbit book, though.
Me either.
Because I do like The Hobbit. Not as much as Lord of the Rings, but the first 2 Hobbits are pretty good. The last one it is not even certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but
Oh no.
I like Lord of the Rings. It's my comfort movie these days.
I need to rewatch it. Well,
You should watch the
another
extended
short,
one.
since we're on Lord of the Rings, there was another short one that I saw, which is a lot of people say, why didn't, if they had the eagles that they could ride on, why didn't they just ride all the way to Mordor? And there's a conspiracy that that was Gandalf's plan all along. And that's why when he is falling into the volcano, he's like, fly, you fools, fly. He wasn't just telling them to get out of there. He was trying to tell them to, go on the eagles.
Yeah, because he wanted to go over the mountain and not through it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he wanted to meet with the eagles on the top of the mountain, but then it was
Yeah.
snowy and he told Frodo to choose, and Frodo was worried about, his cousins and the other people that they were gonna freeze to death.
Yeah, because
Oh,
they are tiny hobbits.
yeah. Oh, I
Well,
would love
this
to be a
was
hobbit.
fun.
Me, yes, it was very fun. I am so glad we did this. I did enjoy our break. I love doing this with you, but I do appreciate the time extra I had to do the things I needed to do to get ready for vacation. And I'm
Definitely.
so glad we're back at it.
Me
And
too.
I think,
Let us know in the comments what conspiracy theories you were most surprised by, or what other ones we don't know about.
yes, but especially the ones we don't know about because I am so interested in conspiracy theories. And like you said, this is all alleged. This is
Mm-hmm.
for entertainment purposes. We're not coming for people because that's just not our vibe.
Mm-mm.
But it's been
All
a
in fun.
great night with you, and come back next week and see what we have in store. And I think that's all I have to say.
I agree. Thanks for listening to All the Tea We Cannot Sip.
Good night. Bye bye.
Bye.